Going all the way back to 2016, I have video after video after video talking about economists, um, Office for Budget Responsibility, even the government's very own analysis of what different types of Brexit would mean to the UK economy. For example, basically staying in the single market and customs union would probably still cause damage because we've left politically, but there will still be some damage, but it wouldn't be too much. But for example, leaving the single market but staying in the customs union may do around about roughly, I think, 2% of what it was. Leaving, of course, with a deal, a more substantial deal than at least the one we currently have, would be known as the quote soft version of Brexit, would still cause around 2 to 3%. It's still a lot of economic damage. And even though we're talking about, very small percentile numbers of like 2 or 3%, what we're really talking about is trillions upon trillions of pounds that the UK is no longer receiving into its treasury, which can have massive knock-on effects to doing stuff that maybe it wants to do, putting that money into services, building infrastructure. And of course, the most damaging form of Brexit, and of course, they didn't really know. This was it. The conservative number put forward, done by the most damaging points of a hardest of all hard possible Brexit, was around 8%. Some said more, that it might be towards 10%, but we look at the numbers now and we've got around 6%, and that has actually gone up. So we may be reaching that 8% number. And as always, as we're going to be exploring today, we're going to be looking at Euro news because, as I've always said, it's always good to sort of go and get, other people's different countries' view of what your country is doing and asking sometimes what the hell is going on in your country. So, like I said, today we go over to Euro news covering Liz Truss's speech at the conference of declaring, "I want growth, growth, growth." But the ultimate irony is, no matter how much Liz Truss really wants that growth, Brexit has damaged her own chances at it. So today we're going to go diving into this article to find out just how much it has damaged her own goal. So before we do that, please do remember to press that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, there is the YouTube thank you button down below as well. And of course, there is the YouTube subscription, the Pony Club, if you would like to join that, where you get badges, emojis, and whatnots, and you get a live, a free live, whatever it is, the live thing. You get one of those free per month that you can use as well when we do a live stream. So, as always, thank you very much to all the people who do help and support the channel, even if you do just click the like and share button. So, as always, thank you very much to all those people, and on with this. So, as we said, this comes from Euro News with the title of Liz Truss wants growth, growth, and growth. And here's how Brexit has damaged her goal. "I have three priorities for our economy: growth, growth, and growth." The concept formed the centerpiece of Liz Truss's speech to the Conservative Party conference, and the new British Prime Minister mentioned the word more than 24 times. "For too long," she said, "our economy has not grown as strongly as it should have done," Truss said. She underlined the importance of growth to the UK economy by linking it to the need to tax cuts, putting up a sign that Britain is open for business, slash regulation, boost investment, and improve public services. Castigating those who tried to stop growth, she vowed that she would not allow the anti-growth coalition to hold us back. And she painted Brexit in entirely positive terms, saying that the government was seizing new-found freedoms outside the European Union and making most of the huge opportunities that Brexit offers. Yet, several reports say that one significant factor may have impacted negatively on Britain's growth and economy, and also creating a barrier to future performance. That is Brexit. Some surveys have said that the vote for Brexit in the June of 2016 referendum had a damaging effect on the British economy even before the UK actually left the EU's economic structures. Voting for Brexit had a large negative effects on the UK economy between 2016 and 2019, leading to higher import and consumer prices, lower investment, and slower real wage growth and GDP growth, wrote two economists for the London School of Economics in a paper for the think tank UK Changing Europe published this year. This happened even though at this stage there was even very little or no trade division away from the EU, the report said. Another report by the Centre for Economic Policy Research reached a very similar conclusion. Even before Brexit had actually taken place, the referendum shock of June 2016 has already had substantial economic costs, it said in March of 2020, updating its previous analysis from 3 years earlier, saying that we estimate that Brexit depression increased the UK consumer prices by at least 2.9%, and this represents an £870 per year increase in the cost of living for the average UK household. That's what these four authors had to say. An assessment by the Investment Monitor in January of 2022 also found that UK growth had trailed that of other leading counterparts in the years following the Brexit vote, even though it had been ahead at the start of 2015, and again at the time of the 2016 referendum. Based from figures from the ODC, the UK GDP grew by 14.3% during second quarter 2016 and third quarter 2021. This is a smaller growth rate than four of the EU's largest economies during that very same period. It had the highest index growth rate at 32.2, followed by Spain 26.6, France 23%, and Italy even at 16.3, it said. In the post-referendum, the pre-TCA, the Brexit post-EU Trade Cooperation Agreement period, the economic effects of Brexit began to materialise. Products were exposed to the uncertain future of trading relations with the EU and experienced a lower trade growth, said another reporter from the LES researchers for UK Changing Europe, published in April of 2022. So it also concluded that the UK-EU trade barriers had caused UK food prices to rise by 6% between the end of 2019 and September of 2021, compared to the years before of December 2019. So as you can see, on that alone, not even, quote, Brexit had happened yet. We were just talking about the aftermath of the vote and even the implementation period where they were sort of still in those very heated negotiations. You can already see that even though Brexit hasn't happened, there has already been a significant effect on our economy. So this was, it's shocking, but unfortunately, there's a lot of people who still don't want to acknowledge this. And I think that we cannot really have a serious conversation about our economy unless you actually have, talk about Brexit. And you can't. And you see that taking place now. And it's going to be funny. It's really going to be funny over the next couple of years where we've got Liz Truss and those Brexit libertarian conservatives desperate to try and achieve this, amazing growth. And yet here they are refusing to talk about Brexit. When it's very obvious that Brexit, and this, bear in mind, this report so far is only talking about the post-referendum results. It's not even talking about the fact that Brexit has happened yet. And it gets even worse. So, this is the post-2021 after Brexit took effect. This year has seen economists begin to separate the economic damage done by Brexit from that wrought by the COVID pandemic. In a June report by John Siegfried for the Centre for European Reform, they estimated that the final quarter of the 2021 GDP of the loss was at least 5.2% smaller, investment was 13.7% lower, and trade goods were 13.6% lower than they would have been if the UK had remained in the EU. He added that the tax rises imposed by Boris Johnson's government would not have been needed if the UK had stayed in the EU or even in the single market and customs union. Two other reports have also cast shadow over Liz Truss's desire to advertise as Britain was open for business. The UK's Office for Budget Responsibility reported in March that the UK had missed out on much of the recovery in global trade amid the recovery from the pandemic, noting that the UK appears to have become less trade-intensive economy. And its forecast since that month has estimated that the post-Brexit trade deal will reduce the long-running productivity by 4% relative to remaining in the EU. The Big Brexit, published in June of 2022 by the Resolution Foundation, a think tank, and the LES, found that a drop in British trade openness, measured with a share of GDP, showed a much faller higher in countries with similar trade profiles such as France. In May, a report by the Peterson Institute of Economics found that Brexit was driving inflation in the UK higher than its European peers, despite suffering the very same economic shocks from Russia's war in Ukraine and the soaring energy prices. It blamed particular labour shortages resulting from the end of freedom of movement of the of the EU migrant workers to the UK, as well as the new trade barriers. In September, CTAM reported the number of UK businesses exporting to the EU had fallen by a third compared to 2020 due to the extra red tape when they were faced with trading with the bloc. It also quoted figures from the UK's own Revenue and Customs Department, HMRC. And an earlier study by the London School of Economics from April found that Brexit caused major disruption to both the EU UK exports and imports, that many British firms had just stopped trading with the EU. And Eurostat data on EU trade with the UK, published back in March, said that goods from the UK to the EU in 2021 declined by nearly a quarter relative to 2019, with the value of service imports from the UK fell by 7% over that very same period. The UK left the EU at the end of January of 2020, and the new rules came into force when the transition period ended on the December 31st of that year. Its departure from the EU single market and custom union and the trade deal negotiated by the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson created significant barriers of trade with the bloc. All those reports, Office for Budget Responsibility, Resolution Foundation, Peterson for Institute of Economics, CTAM reported it, LES has reported it. You've got Eurostat data from Europe. Time and time and time again, we are constantly seeing economists say, look, Brexit is having a negative impact on our economy, and significantly so. And until someone actually, or at least until we can actually have a full, proper adult conversation, which unfortunately we still can't because, well, partly because the Brexiteers are very much in charge and they will cry foul at any talk of their precious Brexit failing, that you can't have this conversation. And this is why I think it is so important that these Brexiteers are now in charge, because their grand project, they are at the helm well and truly, even more so than Boris Johnson. You know, because it's not just the ministers and the cabinet ministers that are around Liz Truss, it's those think tanks as well that she has brought in. So if Brexit cannot work, even under a situation where you have the ultra true believers at the helm steering the Brexit ship, and it is still crashed on the rocks, then what does this really say about Brexit? And eventually there will be conversations about Brexit. We saw this earlier by a Conservative MP, I think it was Tobias Ellwood, came out and said, yeah, we actually have to start talking about the problems that Brexit has created. And of course, he was shouted down. He was a lone voice in the wilderness. But look at the recent Conservative conference where you had two fringe events. You had two fringe events, one that was pro-European and one that was celebrating Brexit. The pro-European event was packed to the rafters, while the pictures from the pro-Brexit event, barely anyone was in attendance. I think it was like 12 people attended. That's not a good look for a party that is meant to be the champions of Brexit. And I think even those who are pro-European in the Conservative Party are sensing that their time is indeed coming. Just as I've said before, if we do intend to rejoin the European Union, you not only just need sort of the Labour on board, but you also need the Conservatives on board as well. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, we'll see you all next time.